Hi friends. In the Informatica interview based questions, we are discussing today. The topic is called session. So in the sessions, what are the properties are there and where we can use the sessions and how the session properties are there. We look have a look once here. So we will discuss one by one with the practical and interview questions. Enlist some properties of sessions. A session is available in the workflow manager and is configured by creating a session task. So within a mapping program, there can be multiple sessions and it can be either reusable or non-reusable. To see here in the designer where we go to the workflow manager, so we are having here sessions. Suppose if I am taking some one workflow here, this is called as a session. In this session, we are having lot of properties. We will discuss one by one here now. Some of the properties of the session are as follows. As per the requirement, session task can be run either concurrently or sequentially. So, if suppose we are having multiple sessions, we needed multiple sessions, and we can create multiple sessions also here like this, and we can connect like this, and we can execute multiple sessions sequentially or concurrently also. A session can be configured to analyze the performance. So, which is configured to analyze the performance and to create or run a session task. It is required to have general information about session name, schedule, and integration services. So, this is having to create or run a session task. It is required to have a general information is session name, and schedule and integration service we are having. If suppose if you look here, these things are session name. What is the session name? This one, and we are having schedules and everything in the properties. Okay, we see one by one here by looking at the questions. Other important property of session includes session log file and the test load, error handling, commit interval, and target properties. The session log file is contains how many files are executed and writer and reader and transformation threads and where the errors are getting that kind of things are there in the session log file. The test load. In this we are having test load property also. So like that we will have here test load only one enable test load means only one record will save and it will get in the output, and from that we will know and what type of output is available in the target side. Error handling. So error handling also we are having here in the session level properties. Those are general. Here we are having fail parent in this task. This is a one error handling, and the properties also we are having here config object stop on errors. If suppose we are having one error, we can stop. These kind of things are available in the session properties. And commit interval and target properties also we are having. How many number of sessions is grouped in one batch? So how many number of sessions it is grouped in one batch? Any number of sessions can be grouped in one batch, but however, for an easier migration process, it is better if the number of lesser in one batch. So we can use any number of sessions, but for the easier migration, we have to use lesser number for one batch. How to recover sessions in concurrent batches? If multiple sessions in concurrent batch fail, you might want to truncate all targets and run the batch again. So if we If the concurrent batches fail, we have to do one thing is truncate all targets and run the batch again. However, if a session in a concurrent batch fails and the rest of the session completes successful, you can recover the session as a standalone session. So we have to keep in mind here. However, if a session is in a concurrent batch, if a session is in concurrent batch, the rest of the sessions and one concurrent batch fails, the rest of the sessions complete successfully, you can recover the session as a standalone session. To recover the session in concurrent batch, we have to do these following steps, that are copy the failed session using operations copy session. By using the copy session, we can copy the failed sessions and drag the copied session outside the batch to be a standalone session. So follow the steps to recover the standalone session. So delete the standalone copy. How can you complete unrecoverable sessions? Under certain circumstances, when a session does not complete, you need to truncate the target tables and run the session from the beginning. So, run the session from the beginning when the Informatica server cannot run recovery, or when running recovery might result in inconsistent data. If there is no recovery mode on the session and workflow failed in mid of the execution, then don't truncate the table immediately. If there is a large volume of data is performing by load and more than 25% data has loaded in the then if same workflow has multiple session, then check particular session which caused to failed and fire the delete command only to delete the particular session data which has loaded, and copy the session into new workflow and run only that session or dependent others. So only whatever the session is failing, we can delete that session by using the delete command only to delete particular session data which has loaded into the copy. Can we run a group of sessions without using Workflow Manager? It is possible to run two sessions only by pre-session, as next one is post-session using PMCMD command without using workflow, not more than two. So we can run a sessions so without using Workflow Manager by we having the properties that are pre-session and post-session using which command? PMCMD command, not more than two. We cannot do more than two. What is meant by direct and indirect loading options in sessions? So direct loading can be used to single transformation, whereas indirect loading can be used to multiple transformations or files. In the direct, we can perform recovery process, but in the indirect, we cannot do it. What is the benefit of session partitioning? While integration service is running in the environment, the workflow is partitioned from for better performance. These partitions are then used to perform extraction, transformation, and loading. So, what is the session? What is a session and batches? Session is nothing but is a set of instructions that tells the Informatica server or integration service how and when to move data from source to targets. After creating the session, we can use either the server manager or the command line program PMCMD to start and stop the session. Batches, it provides a way to group of sessions for either serial or parallel execution by the Informatica server. There are two types of batches we are having, sequential as well as concurrent. So the sequential run session one after the other. Concurrent means run session at the same time. What are the various session tracing levels? Normally, we are having default logs initialization and status information, error encountered, skipped row due to transformation errors, summarizes session results but not the row level ters. And also we are having ters, that is log initialization, error messages, notification of rejected data, verbose initialization. In the verbose initialization, normal tracing level, additional initialization information, names of index, data files used, and detailed transformation statistics. Verbose data. The verbose initialization, it records row level logs. Can we copy a session to new folder or new repository? Yes, we can copy a session to new folder or repository, provided the corresponding mapping is already in the folder or repository. So when we copy the session to new folder, we have to provide the corresponding mapping in that folder or repository. Is it possible to store all the Informatica session log information in a database table? Normally, the session log is stored as a binary compression .bin file in session logs directory. Can we store the same information in database tables for future analysis? It is not possible to store all the session log information in some table along with error related information. We may get some other session related information from metadata repository tables like rep underscore scss underscore log. To capture error data, we can configure the session as below. Go to session, config objects, error handling section. So give the settings, error log type. Here relational database. If see here, you go to config object. So config object error handling section. In this we are having error handling section we are having. In that we go, this is error handling section. We have to go to error log type, error log type table name prefix. That are things we will give here. Error log type. So relational database or flat file we will give according to our requirement. You see here error log type, relational database, error log type, give database connection, and we want to store the tables. Error log table name prefix for error tables. By default, Informatica creates four different error tables. If we provide prefix here, the error tables will be created with the same prefix in the database. Log row data. This option is used to log the data at the point where the error happened. So by using the log row data, we can find where the error happened. Log source row data. So capture the source date for the error record. Log source row data, that is error data will be stored into single column of the database table. We can specify the delimiter for the source data here. List of error tables created in the Informatica are PM error data stores the metadata about transformation row error and its corresponding source row. PM error message means stores the metadata about an error and error message. PM error session stores the metadata about the sessions. PM error transmits transformation stores metadata about the source and transformation ports such as name and data type. When a transformation error occurs, the above tables are specifically used to store the information about exception. Example, records in the reject file. So we can use this database for error handling strategy, but this does not contain all the information that are present in the session log, like performance details, means thread busy percentage, details of the transformation invoked in the session, etc. So we can also check the contents of repository session log view under Informatica repository schema. So however, the two does not contain all the information. Better it is to go for the session log only. So can we call a shell script from the session properties? The integration service can execute shell commands at the beginning or at the ending of the session. The workflow manager provides the following types of shell command each session task that are pre-session command, post success pre-session command, post-session success command, post-session failure command. So use any valid Unix command for shell script for Unix nodes or any valid DOS or batch file for Windows nodes. Configure the session to run the pre and post session shell commands. So this can be used for we use this touch file creation as well as indirect file loading and some other things we are doing in the pre-session and post-session things. Can we change the source and target table names in the session level? Yes, we can change the source and target table names in the session level. Go to the session and navigate to the mapping tab. Select the source target to the source or target to be changed. For the target, mention new table name, target table name, and for source table name. See here, target table name, source for source table name. So here we are having, so go to source, go to the session and go to the mapping tab. Here session, go to the mapping tab. Here we have to change here. We can our names of the uh, target and source table. Select the source target to be changed. Target mention new table name. Target table name. Uh, Here target table name. Source table name. Table name prefix. We are having all the properties here. We see one by one in the coming questions. One more suitable method would be parameterize the source and target table name. We can run the same mapping concurrently using different parameters files. So we have to enable concurrent run mode in the workflow level. Also find more information regarding parameterization. How to write flat file column names in the target. So there are two options available in session properties to take care of this requirement. For this, go to mapping tab, target properties, choose the header option as a output field name or use header command output file. So we'll create your output file with the header record and the column heading names will be the same of your target transformation port names. Option 2, we can create our command to generate the header record text. We can use an echo command here to get this created. Here is an example echo is employee ID, department ID. So it is recommended using the second option is it as it gives more flexibility for writing column names. So what are the error tables present in Informatica? We are having already seen this PM error data, PM error message, and PM error session and PM error transition. What are the alternate ways to stop session without using stop on errors? Option set as one in session properties. We can also use stop and error in the expression method. So stop or error expression method in the code of variable declaration or output variable. So we can give stop and error based on some user defined conditions. Suppose a session fails after loading 10,000 records in the target. How can we load the records from 10,001 when run the session next time? So we configure session in the normal mode rather than bulk mode by using recovery strategy in the session properties, selecting the option resume from last checkpoint. So we have to keep in mind resume from last checkpoint. Then we can run the session at the last commit interval. So in this case, if we specify commit interval 10,000 and the integration service issues the commit after the loading is 10,000. So records then the load of the records is 10,000 fund. So after that we will get the from the 10,000 when we give resume from last checkpoint. If 9,919 rows were loaded and session fails, integration service did not issue any commit as the commit interval in this case is 10,000, then we cannot perform recovery in this case. Truncate and target table and restart the session. So if we loaded in the 9,999. And define the types of commit interval apart from user defined. The different commit intervals are target based commit and source based commit. So the target based commit means if the Informatica server commits the data based on the number of target rows and the key constraints on the target table. The commit point also depends on buffer, block size, and commit interval. Where source based commit means the Informatica server commits database on the number of source rows. The commit points is the commit interval you configure the in the session properties. Suppose session is configured with the commit interval of 10,000 rows and the source has a 50,000 rows. Explain the commit points for the source based commit and target based commit. Assume appropriate values whenever required. So if suppose we are having target based commit is buffer size 7,500, next time is 15,000. So every commit every 15,000 means is a 22,500 and 30,000 for 40,000, 50,000. So source-based commit does not affect the rows held in a buffer. Commit every 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and 50,000. So how to capture performance statics and individual transformation in the mapping and explain some important statistics that can be captured. Use the tracing level verbose data. So it is a best example for this. How can we parameterize success or failure email list? We can parameterize and email user list can modify the values in parameter files. Use $pm success email user or $pm failure email user. Also, we can use pm rep command to update the email task. Update email address, D for folder name, S for session name, U for success email address, F for failure email address. So is it possible that session failed but still the workflow status is showing success? So if the workflow completes successfully, it will show execution status of success irrespective of whether any session within the workflow failed or not. So the workflow success status has nothing to do with session failure. So if and only if we set the session general option in the workflow designer fail parent. If this task fails, or then only the workflow status will display failed on the session failure. What is busy percentage? Duration of time the thread was occupied compared to total run time of the mapping. So let's say we have one writer thread. This is thread is internally responsible for writing data to the target table or file. Now, if our mapping runs for 100 seconds, but the time taken by mapping to write the data to target is only 20 seconds because time is busy is reading transfer data, then busy percentage can be is 20%. Can we write PLSQL block and pre and post session or in target query override? Yes, we can. Remember always put a backslash before any semicolon we use in the PLSQL block. So whenever a session runs, does the data gets overwritten in a flat file target? Is it possible to keep the existing data and add the new data to the target file? Normally, with every session run, target file data will be overwritten, except if we select append if exist. Append if exist option for the target session property, which will append the new data to the existing data in the flat file target. Can we use the same session to load the target table with any different database having same target definition? Yes, we can use the same session to load some target definition in different database with the help of parameterization. So using different parameter files with the different values of the parameters target connection object, use $db connection underscore tgt and owner schema name table name prefix with the $param target tgt underscore table name to run the single workflow with the session to load two different database target tables. We can consider using concurrent workflow instances with different parameter files. Even we can load two instances of the same target connected in the same pipeline at the session level use different relational connection object created for different databases. How do you remove the cache files after transformation? After session complete, DTM Data Transfer Manager removes cache memory and deletes the cache files. In case using persistent cache and incremental aggregation, then cache files will be saved. Why doesn't running session quit when Oracle or Sybase return fatal errors? So the session will only quit when its threshold means stop on errors is set to 1. Otherwise, the session will continue to run. If we have written a source override query in source qualifier in mapping level, but have modified the query in session level SQL override, then how integration service behaves? So here, in Informatica integration service treats the session level query as final during the session run. If both queries are different, integration service will consider the session level query for execution and will ignore the mapping level query. How can we store previous session logs? So if you run the session in the timestamp mode, then automatically session log out will not override the current session log. So go to session properties and go to config object. There in the log option, select the property that is save session log by session runs. Save session run log for the runs. So change the number want to save the log files, so we can give them, so default it is 0. So if you want to save all the log files, create every run, and then select the option save session log for these runs. Sessions timestamp we can give there, and you can find these properties in the session or workflow properties. What are the prerequisite tasks to achieve the session partition? So in order to perform session partition, one need to configure the session to partition source data. So and then installing the Informatica server machine in multiple CPUs. Which files are created during the session runs by Informatica server? During session runs, the Informatica server creates following files that are error logs, bad files, and workflow log and session log. Briefly define a session task. Session task means it is a chunk of instructions that guides a powercenter server about how and when to transfer data from source to target. What does command task mean? A command task nothing but it permits one or more than one shell commands in Unix or DOS in Windows to run during the workflow. What is the standalone command task? This task can be used anywhere in the workflow to run the shell commands. What is meant by pre and post session shell commands? The command task can be called pre and post session shell command for a session task. Once can run it pre session command or post session success command, post session failure command. Define user defined event. So user defined event is nothing but is a flow of tasks in the workflow. Events can be developed and then raised as need comes. So where can we find throughput option in Informatica? The throughput option can be found in the Informatica workflow monitor only. In workflow monitor, right click on the session, then click on get run properties. Under the source and target statistics, we get the throughput option. What are the partition points? Partition points mark the thread boundaries in source pipeline and divide the pipeline into stages. How do we estimate the number of partitions that a mapping really requires? Is it dependent on the machine configuration? So it depends upon the Informatica versions we are using. Suppose if we are using Informatica 6 supports 32 partitions, 7 64 partitions, like that. It will goes on moving. How can you access the remote source into your session? So relational source. To access the relational source such as situation remote place, you need to configure database connection to data source. File sources. So to access the remote source file, you must configure the FTP connection to the host machine before you create the session. Heterogeneous. So when your mapping contains more than one source types, the server manager creates a heterogeneous session that displays source options for all types. How can we partition a session in Informatica? So in Informatica Power Center, partitioning option optimizes parallel processing on multi-processor hardware by providing a thread-based architecture and built-in data partitioning. GUI-based tools reduce the development effort necessary to create the data partitions and streamline ongoing troubleshooting and performance tuning tasks while ensuring data integrity throughout the execution process. As amount of data within an organization expands and real-time demand for information grows, the Power Center partitioning option enables hardware and applications to provide an outstanding performance and jointly scale to handle large volumes of data and users. What is the difference between partitioning of relational target and partitioning of file targets? Partitions can be done both relational as well as flat files. Informatica supports following partitions, that is database partitioning, round robin partitioning, pass-through and hash key range partitioning. All these are available in the relational targets. For flat file only database partitioning is not applicable and everything will be applicable. Round robin and everything is applicable. For the flat file only database partitioning is not applicable. So in Informatica supports Navi partitioning. You can just specify the name of the target file and create the partitions. Rest will be taken care of in Informatica sessions. What is the parallel processing in Informatica? So after optimizing the session is its fullest, we can further improve the performance by exploiting underutilized hardware power. This refers to parallel processing and we can achieve this Informatica Power Center using partitioning sessions. So the Informatica Power Center partitioning option increases the performance of the Power Center through parallel data processing. The partitioning option will let you split the large data set into smaller subsets, which can be processed in parallel to get a better session performance. What are the different ways to implement parallel processing in Informatica? So we can implement parallel processing using various types of partition algorithms, that is database partitioning, that is, it's an integration service query the database system for table partition information. It reads partitioned data from the corresponding nodes in the database. So database partition can be done in the database and we can read from the corresponding nodes in the database. The round robin partitioning, using this partitioning algorithm in the integration service distributes data evenly among all partitions. It makes sense to use round robin partitioning when you need to distribute rows evenly and do not need to group data among partitions. Hash auto key partitioning, the Power Center servers use hash function to group rows of data among partitions. When the hash auto key partition is used, the integration service uses all grouped and sorted ports as a compound partition key. So you can use hash auto key partitioning at or before rank, sorter, and unsorted aggregator transformations to ensure that rows are grouped properly before they enter these transformations. So hash user key partitioning. Here the integration service uses hash function to group rows of data among partitions based on a user defined partition key. You can individually choose the ports that define the partition key. Key range partitioning. So with this type of partitioning, you can specify one or more ports to form a compound partition key for a source or target. The integration service then passes the data to each partition depending on the ranges you specify for each port. So pass-through partitioning, this is regular partitioning we can use in the Informatica Power Center. So in this type of partition, integration service passes all rows from the partition point and the next partition point without redistributing them. Name the output files created by Informatica server during the session running. So these are the files: Informatica server log and session log file, session detail file, performance detail file, control file, post session email, indicator file, and output file, catch files. These are the files are created in the execution of the session. So we will see one by one here. The Informatica server log. Informatica server creates a log for all status and error messages. It also creates an error log for error messages. These files will be created in the Informatica home directory. Where session log file, Informatica server creates session log file for each session. It writes information about session into log files such as initialization process, creation of SQL commands for reader and writer threads, error encountered and load summary. The amount of detail in the session log file depends on the tracing level that you set. Session detail file. This file contains load statistics for each target in mapping. Session detail includes information such as table name, number of rows written or rejected, and you can view this file by double clicking on the session in the monitor window. Performance detail file. This file contains session performance details, which tells you where the performance will be improved. And to generate this file, select the performance detail option in the session property sheet. Reject file. This file contains the rows of data that the writer does not write into targets. Control file. Informatica server creates a control file and a target file when you run a session that uses the external loader. So the control file contains the information about the target flat file such as data format and loading instructions for the external loader. So in we having post session email. So post session email allows you automatically communicate information about a session run to designated recipients. You can create two different messages. One if the session completed successfully and another the session fails. Indicator file. If you use the flat file as a target and you can configure the Informatica server to create indicator file for each target row. The indicator file contains number to indicate whether the rows was marked for insert or update or delete or reject. Output file. If a session writes to a target file, the Informatica server creates the target file based upon the properties entered in the session property sheet. Catch files. When the Informatica server creates a memory cache. It also creates cache files for allowing circumstances. Informatica server creates index and data cache files. This is regarding session level properties and session level interview based questions. So go through this and once or twice and you can memorize the things and you can we get a good knowledge on the Informatica session, which is a very important topic. Please like, subscribe my channel for more interview questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.